we on? A certain man one day so pondered, what can you give another person? Sympathy? Encouragement? $10? But what can you give to another that is truly of value? And he was eventually so struck with this line of inquiry that he concluded, then why do I expect to receive from another anything worthwhile? And he later said to his old thinking, if this realization wasn't so encouraging, you'd have my sympathy. It's great to know finally where to look, even if it is just to yourself. And a man thought, wouldn't that be a wonderful name for a law firm or the tag team leadership of a new religion? Encouragement and sympathy. So that there was always the availability of you having it both ways. And must I, at this advanced stage of the game, note for you that a real warrior doesn't want even the possibility of having it both ways. How does a man expect to ever get anything done if he does not do it the one way that it must be done? Oh, it's all far too complex, moaned one man. Oh, it's far too simple, sighed another. Not uncommon did one man originally believe that he was riding a train, only to eventually feel that some sort of train was riding him. Well, not exactly riding him, more like running uncontrollably through him so consistently and to such a pitch that it was beginning to ride him down and wear him out. For a realization such as this to be a profit for the few, it cannot be simply in the nature of a common complaint. Which is, you might ask, and which is, I might reply, any complaint that is expressed through word or thought. And one man said, let's hold it down in there, which turns out to be all that is necessary for a while. There is no time but now. There is no reality but now. There is no consciousness but now. And I shouldn't even be saying all of this since by the time you hear it, it's already too late. Yeah, but it's not really too late since everyone knows already what I was talking about. Yeah, but that's precisely what makes it too late. You already knowing it, so by sitting, you already knowing it so, and by sitting there listening about it, proving that you ain't right now doing it. And a perfectly sane and ordinary man then thought, what if that was true? What if there was no time other than right this moment? Would that be woolly weird or what? And within seconds, he excused himself, saying that he had to get back to sane and ordinary affairs. While on a journey, one man, when he first heard the phrase, fake it till you make it, was instantly captivated thereby, until he later began to realize that it was actually as easy to go ahead and do it as it was to fake it. And for the benefit of anyone hearing this who is not a total dunce, I will note that in circumstances such as the ones just described, the connotations of the word easy have been pushed far beyond the norm. In fact, fascinatingly close to a place whereat the concepts of easy and joyfully painful somehow threaten to connect, if not merge. The damnation of the mystic. The curse of those struggling to be more conscious is that it's unnecessary. One man's explanation about something. I only wear glasses so that I can see. One man finally and totally realized his position and just said aloud to life, well, in fact, I can't do it without your help. Sometimes it's good to go ahead and state the obvious, at least to yourself. In the self-deception bake-off, one of the leading contenders would be the feeling that some forms of irritation and criticism are acceptable, justified, and useful. You can read the train schedules, even decide to go to the station and take up traveling. But that one train of special interest to the few can only be boarded by grace of a certain passion. You don't need more knowledge to understand life. You need to be more conscious at every moment. One man's reflection of something. We are cloudy when we could be clear. The playwright's mainstay. There is no drama without complaining. Upon hearing this, one man thought, if I could just somehow use this information in my everyday life, there is really little to gain in continual descriptions of the other condition of consciousness readily accessible to a man at any moment, when he can simply bring it on and experience it for himself. Is this a trick fact? Yes, but it's an outgrowth of life's trick of it being instantly available, but with hardly anyone interested. The body lives by comfort. The body lives by habit. Emotions live by comfort. Emotions live by habit. Thoughts live by comfort, and thoughts live by habit, and all of this is bullshit if it is all too familiar. There was once an established ruler who had many, many enemies, but he kept them all at bay by the use of repetitive, common bullets. Life, efficiency be thy name, but better yet, low-level consciousness. Hey, you got the same name. And for the sake of any listening to this who are not complete dimwits, let's make note of the fact that the few do not necessarily, in every circumstance, look upon that which is efficient as being the most desirable and useful for their own mysterious intentions. Routine consciousness is like a compass without a magnetic north. Conversation between two. There are some things that shouldn't be said. Shouldn't be said or can't be said. Okay, there are some things that can't be said. But you first said things that shouldn't be said. All right. There are things known to a few that are not to be said. One man's note regarding something. We are full when we could be empty. Even though it is not strictly a mental function, no one will ever achieve another state of consciousness without having a mental resolve to do so. And one man thought, we're all out of whack, but we could be aligned. If perhaps we realized that we were born out of whack. A father said to his son, without life's help, you haven't got a chance. And the boy responded, when you say life, are you spelling that like F-A-T-E or G-O-D or D-E-S-T-I-N-Y? To which the elder replied, you can spell it any damn way you want to, but what I said still holds. How can you better define a beneficial progenitor than by such terms as direct and to the point? And most assuredly one not distracted by the mind and its minions. And as the lad's understanding increased, his appreciation deepened for the many, many rational conversations that he and his father almost had, but that the old man had the wisdom to derail in time. Men speak and dream of various freedoms, but the only one worth an alert man's attention is freedom from self-deception. Trains re-examined. If you wish to travel, the apparent conveyances available are both helpful and hindering. Knowing their names help you get started, But then, listening to their continual whistling will eventually stop all forward motion. Buddha leaned out of the cab and asked, "Is that a cow on the tracks up ahead, or just the fat of the land? I mean, of your mind?" There was once an explorer on a ship who could never make landfall because the rocking of the boat kept him from holding the sextant steady. You don't need more knowledge to be more conscious. You just need to be more conscious. One man was born with a telephone in his head. In later years, he would sometimes stand at his front window and call out, "You guys up there on the pole, climb a little higher. I can still hear you." Once upon sometime. Once upon a time, there was a man who made up metaphors and allegories so that he wouldn't have to think about things plainly and directly. Of course, there are also bunches of people who want to hear metaphors and allegories so that they won't have to blah, 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 blah. There was once a man who was born with a telephone in his head. Yeah, we just did that one. One man's comment concerning something: "We are busy when we could be still." Tonight's little fairy tale. Once upon a time, a man went to a mystic and asked him, "Has your lifetime of effort in the struggle made you happy?" And the mystic pondered this for a bit, then said, "Being a mystic, I am obliged to be truthful with you. So, to take your word, happy, as it is normally used, I cannot say that my efforts have made me happy, but I will say that had I not spent my life involved with the struggle, I would have been intolerably miserable." It struck one man, "I wish they wouldn't allow talking on the train." You see, right there is yet another darn good reason for a man to own his own railroad. Because then you can run it any way you want to. But the responsibility, groaned one man. But the responsibility, sighed another. As a result of the progress he made in the aftermath of what he had originally perceived to be a tragedy, one man thought, "It may have been the best thing that ever happened to me." And upon a moment of further reflection added, "Everything that ever happened to me was the best thing that ever happened to me." That was on his behalf. Or at least a third. You cannot be conscious in the moment and at the same time lie to yourself. You think this is why so few people are interested in being so conscious? One man remarks regarding something, "We are covered with flies when we could be free." Okay, another simple view of another thing or two. You will never actually think if you take what you now do as thinking. Certain travails of railroad travel. If you are even just the teensiest little bit pissed, the train won't roll. A farmer prays for rain, a sailor for high winds, a seismologist for earthquakes, and a warrior will take whatever calamity is available. The way of non-standard processions, without rain on his parade, a real man doesn't even have a parade. The fact is, everyone believes that they are fully conscious. They can feel themselves conscious before the fact and conceive of themselves as being conscious after the fact. But it never strikes an ordinary man that he is not conscious during the fact. Like I said, the fact is, one benefit of travel is that when you are in a new place, it can be easier to be aware of your own individual existence and the immediacy thereof. Under fresh conditions, can one more readily be aware that I exist right here, right now? Travel, external and otherwise, with one of the two always available. As he got better at the whole affair, one man drove a stake through his watch right at the very second he wanted to permanentize. There was once a family of brothers who each had a bad memory, so they would remind each other of things they should do. One day their father swallowed them all, gulp, and everyone's memory instantly improved. The travel of the few is not through time, nor is it through space. The travel of the few is uncharted, drawn in the blood from their face. One man's observation of something. We live unsuspecting when realization is possible. The intense traveler's update. If you're talking, you're not moving. Yeah, okay. The super intense traveler's tip. If you're thinking thoughts, you're going nowhere. Yeah, I know. All aboard. I hope. Okay, try it this way. We have enough consciousness to get by, but not enough to be personally conscious. To profitably strive toward the goal, you must be continually involved with attempting the impossible. That is, doing things that do not naturally occur in man. A real warrior doesn't die from defeat, nor does he perish from aging, illness, or other circumstances. A real warrior dies from one thing only: lack of focus. One instance wherein a cliche can be validly and comprehensively applied when it comes to being more specifically conscious, it is every man for himself. The final word for the few concerning the question of happiness. Only one thing has the possibility of making a real person happy: their being alive. Which in their case, of course, requires being more conscious of being alive. I just hate it when you make it that simple, grumbled one man. And oh, I just hate it and love it when you do it, sighed his partner. Insofar as a man wanting enlightenment, awakening, realization, and liberation, remember that none of this is possible in circumstances of self-deception. Which specifically are, ask a man. Why, the circumstances of everyday existence, of course. One man's kinda poetic take on it. The endless struggle for that special consciousness. The tide comes in, the tide goes out, and that about covers it. Ornithology and consciousness plucked clean. The way to entrap a bird is to distract it. The way to think normally ain't that much different. One man proposes, hurricanes are not so bad if you can establish a permanent eye and stay therein. In reaction to certain things that happened to him after his awakening, a certain term came to this one man's mind. I'm quoting. This is not what I'd expected. After being much complimented on her beauty, one woman remarked, if you think I'm something, you should take a good look at life. After being exposed to some of the metaphors being used here, one man paused long enough to ponder. If trains represent consciousness, then are thoughts the already laid out tracks to which a train is confined? Or could it be the other way around? And suddenly, such pondering made him extremely dizzy, and he stopped it. Well, of course, I can't say that he specifically stopped, that is, abandoned. Well, of course, I can say that he specifically stopped, that is, abandoned this particular line of thought. But that doesn't mean that some line of mental activity didn't take back over and have things running as smoothly as ever. A chap one day standing on an active platform at the station looked up from his paper and then down the tracks into the distance and had this thought: why is hearing a certain train's departure announced over and over again sometimes annoying to me when I insist on coming here, where I both know that it will occur and have every reason to suspect that I will not avail myself thereof? He continued for a while to gaze far down the tracks, then dropped his paper as though some realization had come upon him. And lastly, a definition: talk. Noise that men pretend makes sense. Since all sane people are not totally satisfied with life, what would you suspect would be the most common answer? We could always make the common denominator of sane people's reply if you ask them, what is the primary problem, the primary shortcoming of humanity that keeps them from being happy? First, consider happy again for a second. Do you realize that besides the fact of humans being the one with language, but animals are not happy? If animals could suddenly talk, and if we could have it both ways, that they could talk and if they could talk in the sense that men can, but still had their own background, which the latter would preclude the former. But if we could do it, and we ask them about being happy, they've got no knowledge of being happy. And I'm not playing with words, but their version of it would be to be satisfied. Satisfied. Which, of course, at your animal level, is all that can be asked for. The body is not happy. The body is not happy to survive. It is satisfied to survive. And that is all that an animal could express, if it could express anything. That the best it could make out of the notion of happy would be, what do you mean satisfied? Like a good meal, a good screw, a good sleep, a good roll in the dust, the mud, the water. That's happy to them. But you look at them and they don't go. They do whatever it takes to make them satisfied, and then they normally roll over and take a nap, smoke a cigarette and take a nap, and that's it. So where does the idea, well, that's tied to what I was going to say about what would be humanity's general response to the question as to what is the primary problem that men face. What holds men back? What is the biggest stumbling block to human evolution? What is the biggest hindrance to the collective happiness of man? Now, we are beyond the survival level, remember. We're speaking about that which is unique to man. So we're not talking about people who are starving. We're not talking about people who are faced with a daily question of survival, because that would be back to the satisfied level. We're talking about the level at which people who might be hearing this operate, live. Humanity's, I don't think there'd be any question, their response to what is the biggest hindrance, what is man's biggest shortcoming, flaw, etc., would be his aggression. If you think about it a second, everything from social, from quite mundane social observations to those of a religious bent, even though they would use different terminology. What appears to be, and I'm not saying that the observation is lacking or askew, would it not seem to you that if you just think about, not beyond the survival level, but just among civilized people who have no problem surviving day to day physically, what is it between individuals to ordinary mind, it seems to be on a larger scale. When they ponder, if they're asked such questions, they would take it on probably on a larger level. What does it seem to be the problem between groups of people, between nations, religious groups, cultural groups? What seems to be the problem? All the way from the individual, not discounting that, but the individual, the violence in one's neighborhood, to the violence on the international scene between nations. You think about it, and one more time, we're not talking about two countries perhaps fighting over having border skirmishes, and both nations are operating at the bare subsistence level, and they're fighting over a water hole, or they're fighting over the one plot of ground that is fertile. We're talking about sophisticated, civilized people, just the mainstream of this planet now. Every time you find an occasion of everything from nations to individuals fighting, what is it? They're not fighting over any longer physical. That they're not fighting simply, as I said, if they're beyond the survival level, they're not fighting physically over a water hole. And they are not, so that takes care of the physical. And they are not fighting regardless of what they say. Because anyone with a modicum, anyone with the ability to focus their attention and to be objective for several seconds, notwithstanding the fact that men claim otherwise, men do not fight, nations do not fight over theories. They do not fight over ideas. Do men fight over ideas individually? No. There is no such thing as mental aggression. It is said there is, which is almost a side subject, but to some of it may be immediately obvious, or maybe in a few seconds when I keep pushing it. Men claim otherwise, that nowadays, here it is, the 21st century upon us, and civilized nations now, there are many civilized nations now, are in some form of conflict, either overt or it's just a passing moment of quietness between outbursts. But right now we know all over this planet, figures, the UN or somebody puts out figures at all times, and it seems like constantly nowadays there's something like 157 wars, undeclared and otherwise, going on this planet at any given moment. Some of those are not adherent. Back to what we would consider to be the civilized mainstream countries, peoples, cultures of this planet, there are a handful of instances right now that we all know, they're in the papers constantly, of people who were civilized, had on suits and ties, college educations, they were not living at the hand-to-mouth level, they had art, they had architecture, they had science, and they fell into warfare. The kinds that bring an end or bring a temporary halt to any progress. And they began to devolve right before your very eyes. And when they're interviewed, when someone asks what happens, and it's an accepted fact, it's not that they are misleading the public. They're misleading themselves just by being who they are, by their level of consciousness. They're engaged in that kind of continual self-deception. But people say, the leaders, the observers of conflict such as that, it is stated nowadays that the conflict is over some sort of ideas. Anything else will be subordinate to that. Anything else will be like a side issue that just happened to arise. That, yeah, we may end up now we're fighting over that mountain range, or we're fighting over a certain highway, but we would not be fighting over the highway. We would not be fighting over physical territory had not the original conflict between our diverse political, economic, religious ideas come to loggerheads. So the rest of this, even they dismiss it. Somebody says, well, we can't believe that two civilized countries like you are fighting over a lake. They go, well, the lake's not the problem, or over some village. Of course, they say they were fighting over this little village. They get cameraman in there, and it was a village last week. And that's a bunch of rubble, and they're still fighting over it. And so they say, well, yeah, we're not fighting over the village per se, which always works good. Per se means I don't know what I'm going to say after this. Well, sure, we're not. Well, if you notice, civilized people, that's a wonderful term. If a civilized, educated, ordinary person is caught with his intellectual pants around his ankles, like the prime minister of some country saying, well, we do so-and-so, so-and-so, and some little reporter just says, well, he points out, well, that is absolutely irrational, makes no sense according to your own statement 2 minutes ago. And the man has to go, well, now what I said, I don't mean that was true per se. And so you go, huh? What it means is, well, sure, I mean, that's bullshit, and I don't know, but look here. Listen up here. The point is, the sophisticated, ordinary people, they will say, if it's pointed out that, well, you're fighting over a village or something, how can you explain? You said it was over. Anyway, if it comes about, all I want you to see is, even though that may be where the most blood is being shed over what appears to be a fight over a piece of territory, they will still dismiss that as being of no great consequence. Well, yeah, it may be going on. You know how it is when you're out in the field and hostilities are hot. I mean, that's all infantrymen can do. That's the only way that they have any proof or any evidence of success is to gain ground or to regain ground that was lost. But that, no. They tell the reporters, they tell the world, no, and themselves. No. We're not fighting over that village per se. No. It is much deeper. It is so much more than that. And even if they cannot enunciate it in any way that makes any great sense, which is why they're in the foreign service or that they're a prime minister and a spokesman for the government, is to be able to take things that make no sense and go and the reporters think, well, damn, I'm going to write it down. I'm not going to get any further in this. And so they report it. The point being that they go to great pains. Life makes men now. The more that you are in the front of the life civilized parade, the closer to the front, the more you are insistent, no matter what the observations, no matter what the field reports may appear to be, the insistence will be that we are not, per se, fighting over mere territory, water rights, some mountain range, some airfield. No, it is over ideas. I ask you again, that is accepted now as reality. You never even think about it anymore. But ask yourself, all it takes is just the least amount, just almost the smallest ability to be objective for several seconds. Ask yourself, is there such a creature, is there such a thing existing as mental aggression? The answer is hardly, it's almost insulting to your intelligence for me. I'd say no, but I will, no. Except the mind has in it thoughts of aggression. Yeah, sure. Well, what do you call that? I don't know. What do you call that? Well, that's mental aggression. Well, where did it come from? What's the basis of it? How did the mind, can you feel within yourself, can you picture a scenario possible that suddenly the mind is just minding its own business? Well, think of parallels if it helps. How about your body's minding its own business? Let's say that you're propped up by a tree at the bus station, and your body's just minding its own business. You're just standing there, and some guy comes walking up beside you and gets right up and walks close enough that he steps on your foot, or even just walks close enough that he comes that much to brushing you. There is nothing whatsoever improper. There's nothing at all out of the ordinary that the body will get aggressive. All right? There it is. There apparently is a simple cause, an obvious cause. This guy came up, and in fact, he can just come up and stand too close. But there you're out by yourself, nobody near you, and this guy out of the whole world, he comes up, and he gets right up against you and just stands there. If you are sane and have an interest in surviving, it is expected, it is proper that your body will get aggressive, whether you do it overtly at that particular point or not. But your body is going to be on the defensive. Immediately, it's going to be ready to be aggressive. All right. Now let's disregard that part. Same guy, you're standing out there by yourself. How about in the middle of a field, if you don't like the bus station too close to traffic? You're out in the middle of a field, propped up against the one lone tree there. Nobody comes up physically. But there you stand, and nothing particular going on, and you're standing there, and it's a nice day. Of course, your mind's running, and your dream's bopping around, boom, boom, boom. Well, no, let's bring a guy into it. I'd keep the simile, the parallels, a little more parallel. You're standing there, and a guy walks up, and you feel no physical threat. He doesn't get too close. He doesn't invade your space. He shows no signs or no vibes coming out of him of any type of threat or aggression. He just comes up, he nods, and you nod back. He stands there, not too close. And with absolutely no sound of hostility, no sound of aggression, he says, you know, it strikes me, as long as the debate's been going on now for obviously easily the last 100 years, it strikes me that the so-called battle between a free market economy and a state planned, the answer is obvious. I mean, it's state planned. Can you imagine suddenly your mind going, state planned? Are you a goddamn idiot? That the mind is so offended that your mind knows that that is ridiculous. It could not be further from the observable, demonstrative proof that a free market economy is the way. It is the only way to go. You know that so much that your mind, it is such an undisputable truth, or indisputable truth, that your mind, being the righteous, intelligent, insightful person that you are, cannot abide that kind of untoward, ill-founded, disruptive error. And so there you stand and you hear him. He gets through with that. Is there any such possibility? Do you realize it's science fiction, it's cartoon time, that your mind, any sane man's mind goes, by that I mean there's anything resembling the tension, the nervous system itself, the tension of my first example when the guy comes up from nowhere out in the middle of the field and joins you too close, gets right up against you. He didn't have to say a word. Your body is already feeling aggression. Not just his, but your body feels aggression. Is there anything? Can you find any similarity? Does it make sense? Can you even dream that it could? No. That in some way the mind, and we start off sort of at ground zero, that you're just sitting there with your own little daydreams, just nothing particular going on, and you're suddenly confronted with an idea, the idea not presented in an aggressive manner, just an objective statement of somebody's opinion, an idea, and your mind hears it and goes, no. And yet it is now such a part of ordinary collective wisdom that no one questions it. It is absolutely beyond question. Which again, I don't need to turn into a sermon, but here's one of the obvious examples again of humans being ordinary humans, the majority, those that outnumber us, many, many millions to one, that they see reality as being one thing, they accept it as one thing, any comment to the contrary is insane, and yet here it is just as obvious as it could be. All an ordinary person would have to do, if they had any intelligence, if they had anything resembling a properly functioning brain, they could do it a lot faster to themselves than it took me. I spent 5 or 10 minutes on that damn thing about the guy staying out there trying to compare physical aggression. You don't even need no damn example, any picture of a man standing in a field. You just think. You'd first realize, okay, he's wrong about, at first it sounded as though I was wrong because there is such a thing as mental aggression, because I got a pretty bad temper. A lot of things irritate me. Whether I say anything or not, a lot of things irritate me, and I think about them, about how stupid people are, how wrong people are, all the damn criminal, insane activity that goes on. Yeah. Now I say, but wait a minute. Is that actually, can you feel, does the mind, and they could go through something, like I did, it's just simply observably true that something is wrong. That would be the minimal that they would come up with, if they would realize that something is wrong in this idea that there is actually a creature mental aggression. There is no such thing. The mind is not aggressive. The brain, forget the mind, that sounds too vague and open to speculation. Your brain, if there's any part of your body that is not aggressive, it's your brain. There'd be much more likelihood if they had their own little biceps and fists that your stomach would get aggressive, or that your liver, that it sees you pick up a bottle of booze and your liver might go, listen, I've about had it. Your body is where aggression is. Your brain, there's no such thing as aggression. An idea does not make the brain aggressive. Sorry. So where does it come from? Animals can only be satisfied, not be happy. And you cannot be happy if you're aggressive. Where does aggression come from? It would seem to be then. I'll go ahead and short circuit some of it. The brain is not aggressive. Ideas do not cause the mind to be aggressive. There is simply no such thing as mental aggression. But everybody talks about the conflicts of ideas, I repeat, and it's now an accepted fact that civilized people, as abhorrent as war is and conflict, at least civilized people now, at least, this sounds like, I'm sounding like now a spokesman for humanity. I hate to say it, but at least some of the civilized nations of this world, at least, I know it sounds kind of ooh, but at least we're beyond the point of fighting over things like Helen of Troy. Where were that? Nations don't go to war to go kidnap or to regain the princess. We don't fight over sex. Nations don't fight one another over sex. And civilized nations do not fight each other over territory. That's what we have the world court for. They fight now. Remember, I'm still doing an imitation of a spokesman for life. They go, I know this sounds still questionable, which it is, but at least we're no longer fighting over those childish, simplistic things. At least now, I know it doesn't sound good, but at least, it's some kind of progress, at least we're now fighting over the world of ideas. Does anybody understand why I went through all that? That would be, I've never heard a spokesman for humanity or the UN or anybody say that, but that would be a feasible apology in the classic sense of the word. That would be an apology of a spokesman for humanity saying, well, yeah, if he was like trying to describe humanity to a creature from another world, they go, yeah, you look upon us and we think you've had thousands of years and we're still involved with aggression. We've got these conflicts going on. But at least in the forward-thinking civilizations, the more progressed areas, at least, I know it sounds silly, folks, you tell the people from other worlds. I know it doesn't sound right. I know we're not perfect yet. But at least we're not fighting simply over physical, sex and territory and food. At least we're fighting, I know, but at least we're fighting over ideas. It shows we're making progress. It does. It does sound like progress, if anybody tried to say that. Except for the fact they're not fighting over ideas. Because to have conflict over ideas, you have got to have aggression, and you have just proven, at least to my satisfaction, that there is no such thing as mental aggression. There's only one form of aggression. It comes from the body. It does not go in man straight from the body to the mind. It goes to emotions. What men call emotions are nothing but survival instincts renamed. They're survival instincts touched with mental activity, touched with imagination, but all forms of mental activity. Emotions are survival instincts in conjunction with words. That's all they are. If you could take it that far, I'll just press ahead like you can, like you already did, then men will discount. It's just obviously true that men are not fighting over ideas, because there is no mental aggression. It is not men's minds defending one idea against another. That is not there's no such thing as brain aggression. So, if men are more than mere animals, then what is it they're fighting over? On what basis are they aggressive? The only thing left that someone would finally say, well, all right, you're saying that it comes from emotions and that gets interpreted some way as the mind. All right, that's the beginning. Let's go from there. That men are fighting, they're emotionally aggressive. That doesn't smell bad. If it is, as I say, an observable and easily observable fact that no animals have anything resembling. I'll forget there's always somebody around trying to write a new paper or get their doctoral degree on, wait a minute, I looked deep into the eyes of a Brazilian warthog and I thought I saw sympathy. We're talking about just everyday observations, common knowledge. Animals do not have human emotions. So then if we think, well, human emotions, in fact, very often, there's probably as many social commentators and philosophers would say that it's emotions that make man singular as opposed to his mental activities. That yes, that is the distinguishing mark of a human, is human emotions. Okay. Except for what? What do they amount to? Well, this, as you know, is no sarcasm or critique. And if you ask an ordinary person, what do human emotions amount to? And if they are fairly ordinary, then you would expect on a good day that they will start off on a positive note. Human emotions. What are they, you ask? Yeah, that's what I asked. Well, let's see. And if it was a good day, and they just not gone through a tax audit, or they were not suffering from PMS, they would say, so, well, human emotions, right? Sympathy. Well, love, they'd probably say first. But love, sympathy. What else would a reasonable person do starting out on the positive note? Now, if you stared at them and made them uncomfortable, like you could start coming up with synonyms, and I could do it, but think yourself, if an ordinary person was trying to give a description, you say, what are human emotions? That which you say distinguishes man from animals. And they go, well, and you say, well, start from the positive, assuming you're going to give me a full range. They go, okay. Then love, sympathy. I suggest to you, without this being an attack, we won't drag it out, that somewhere, unless they might come up with 3 or 4 synonyms for love and sympathy. But even they would, within 2 or 3 synonyms, sort of lose interest and press on to the juicier parts. Love, sympathy. Oh, charity. See, charity. Did I say love? Yeah, love, sympathy. Charity. And, well, we can't leave out hate, prejudice, hostility, anger, criticism, and they start. There being no particular verbal answer I have in mind other than the obvious one, does not anything about human emotions, if you just think about it, just on the basis of what I did or in your own way, to say that human emotions are the function that makes man unique. If you're pushed and you go out, in what positive way does it make him unique? I'm telling you, love and sympathy. You can go ahead and think about yourself. From any ordinary view, not my view, but the way in which emotions are taken, and a man could talk for another 10 minutes giving me descriptions or synonyms, and that's about it. And that can go into sympathy. But they always want to say love, I know that. And they drag in love to family love, romantic love, love for one's children, love for one's ancestors, and then again to sympathy. Does it not strike you as strange that the distinguishing feature of man by many reports can be summed up? When you say, well, it's a function, you go, well, describe the function. How does the function manifest itself? And they can only come out with one manifestation, or 2 if you want to let them stretch it. Come up with 2. And if you say, well, is there a downside to it? And they go, well, sad to say, yes. And I'm not saying that all the downside are not synonymous, but whereas they would probably stop in the listing of the positive with 2 or 4, as I said, even they began to find it unwittingly, find it redundant after they went love, charity, love, sympathy. Oh yeah, and love, sympathy, charity, and and like that. And I said, well, how about the downside? Well, okay, hate, anger, prejudice, greed, envy, prejudice, ill will, and they just go on until you get sick of it. Not that they're all not the same thing, it's just all aggression. But it strikes the human mind, if they're asked about it, that human emotions, again, we start off that by many accounts, probably the most common account if you present it in that way to a person a question, is if you ask them, what is the singular characteristic, the singular operation in man that stands him above and apart from every other creature? People would get around to finally emotions. Some people would try to make a religious, give it a religious connotation, but we get down to emotion. And then, so we establish that. We take that is a very common approach. And then we say, well, describe how, pretend I don't know what human emotions are. I just got here. how do they manifest themselves? What do you mean by emotions? What would I understand? And they go, well, all right, love and sympathy. And you go, well, is there a downside? And then they start stringing out all of the others, which would simply still amount to aggression. Does none of that strike you as open to further question? That the distinguishing mark of man is emotions, and they can be summed up in two words: love and aggression, or sympathy and aggression. If aggression, back to where we started, if ordinary people, which I suggest they would say that the stumbling block, the biggest flaw in man that has got to be overcome for him to continue on, or as they like to say, to keep him from destroying himself and the whole planet, he has got to overcome this aggression. All right? If I hold it all together, they do not mean physical aggression. Now, they mean the physical manifestation, fighting and men shooting each other and nations shooting at one another. But the more civilized be the people they refer to, they are not saying, they don't mean that the people are being motivated by mere physical aggression. We're too sophisticated by that. We're being motivated by aggressions of a more theoretical, of an advanced, of a more civilized nature, which is horseshit. But they say that. They say it, and they cannot observe otherwise, when the least bit of observation, as I said, will show within a man. If he's got any intelligence, he realizes there's no such thing as mental aggression. That is not the basis of it. I think aggressive thoughts, but the mind is not what comes up with it. My mind does not take umbrage or a defensive position to such a degree that I experience brain aggression. It's not possible. It does not happen. So the aggression starts somewhere else, and my mind talks about it. So then if I say, well, it all comes from emotion, you go, okay, then yeah, I guess you're right if you want to put it that way. Now I say, yeah, but emotions, all they are is a second hand, like a second order, a new generation of survival instincts. That in other words, aggressions have no per se basis. There is no emotions that are there growing in their own soil. When you find aggressive thoughts, all you got to do is pull them out, and at the roots are emotions, aggressive emotions. And you pull the roots out of the aggressive emotions, and there are more roots, and they're survival instincts. Aggressive thoughts, aggressive emotions have no soul of their own. They are not their own genesis. They all come from survival instincts. Now we're back to put the question all together. If it is survival instincts, and now into their several permutations that are the basis of man's unhappiness, and happiness would be the cessation of aggression, then the 76-cent question is, where does that leave you? What does it all mean, Charlie? If you ask civilized people, what is the goal of life? What is the purpose? What would you, had you a wish, what is the purpose? What would you wish for? Happiness. And what stands between you and happiness? And they're completely lost. They'll give you examples, personal anecdotes. But if you say, no, what stands between you and happiness? You describe happiness as a thing unto itself. Yes? You see it as a goal. Then there's got to be something or some things that stand between you. Don't give me examples. Give me a name. Something similar to happiness. You know, a something, a function, a malfunction even. But an entity that you can describe that stands between you and additional happiness. No one knows. Like I said, they will attempt to give you an example. But if you say, no, I don't want an example. Describe the phenomenon itself. Describe the general, not the subcategory, not an example, not a locality, but a universal. What is it that stands between you and happiness? On a day-to-day basis, on a personal basis, or expand it? because it will have to be connected some way. How do you see it? As being that which stands before humanity's progress toward happiness. Whether it be worthwhile dragging it out of a man or not, what it amounts to is aggression. The examples they would give. The religious would give examples of un-Christian-like, un-Jewish, un-Muslim behavior, which would all be forms of aggression. That's all it takes to be an infidel by any religious view, is to be aggressive. Because all religions say is the whole point of it is to be full of love. In other words, to be non-aggressive. That would be the religious man's view. The non-clerical view of life would be to simply stop the political, the idealistic. And of course, obviously, what little physical, crude aggression is still left on the planet. They see it. If it was pointed out that aggression is it. Well, I shouldn't say they see it. They see examples of it, but they cannot see that would be aggression. So the question I was leaving you with for at least a minimum of 72, or was it 76 cents? If it is aggression that stands between a man and happiness, are you sure that that does not have any validity in a man attempting to be more conscious? Except remember, there is no higher nervous system source of that kind of aggression. Whereas what you're attempting to do is at the very cutting edge, at the very front rank of human evolution, is trying to affect your own consciousness, and yet you're being plagued by something that is at the tail end, that is at the back of the parade. And people treat it as totally otherwise, that I am fighting today's demons. Humanity is not perfect by God, but at least we're now fighting more of the proper foes. I'm too advanced. I don't believe in this crap about Jehovah's got it in for us and that man sinned. Listen, I've been to school, I've been to college, I've been around. I see now it's other things we must fight against. Oh, really? Yes. If there's one sure way to keep a battle going, is to identify the incorrect enemy. After that, there are no questions of logistics. You never run out of energy for a battle, and you never run out of enemies. And of course, the obvious is, you can never win. But hey, people stuck here for 60, 70, some people 80 years, they got to do something. Turn off the tape.